So hopefully a quick story for you about an interaction that I had back when I was working in a private company with sort of retirement savings, investments, and the wide breadth of knowledge that people have about these systems, even when they're involved in the systems. So, for example, my company that I was working with at the time had a group retirement program where they would match the contribution of the employee if you're registered through them. And you had to be employed with them for a certain amount of time. So when I realized I had, met that threshold, I reached out to a colleague who had been there for maybe 4 years longer than I had, but she was around the same age as me. And, on the form, there were a bunch of different options and I didn't understand. So I just wanted to see what they had done for their plan. And when I messaged her, she said, "What? I am 26 years old. I have not even thought about retiring for a second." And personally, I've been thinking about retiring since the very first time I received a paycheck back when I was 16. But I know that's not the case for everyone. And so I was like, oh, well, we have this program, and I told them all about it, and they were like, what? I had no idea. The company used to have a stock option set up where employees could purchase stocks at like a discounted rate or were gifted stocks for years of service, etc. But they had retired. They had retired that plan for this group retirement investment plan. So even the managers and the longer time staff weren't aware of this program. So I had to do a bit of, tracking down and personal research to figure out what setup I wanted to do. The company based it off of a percentage of your income. So I think it went up to like 6% of your income. And they would match it. It doesn't matter. Let's just say, for example, 4%. So if I made $600 per week and I had it set up so that 4% of that pay, pre-tax pay, would be deducted and transferred into my employee investment, the employer would match that amount. So $24 from me, $24 from my employer, $48 in my investment fund each week. That money would then be taken by the investment company, which in this case it was Manulife, but there's a bunch, and they would invest it in, stocks or bonds, ETFs, etc., depending on what preferences I told them that I had. So if you are risk adverse, they would probably put them into long-term savings bonds for you. If you're comfortable with risk for high return, they might put it into investments somewhere in the middle, maybe ETFs. I know that's just a lot of acronyms and words, but they would do it for you. And the employer would actually pay the fee on behalf of the employees. So if you were to go privately to Manulife and say, I want to start up an investment firm, they might charge you a flat rate fee or a commission on your amount. It depends. They all have different setups, or you can do them yourself. Questrade and Wealthsimple are the two that I'm familiar with in Canada. I personally use Wealthsimple. Anyway, again, not financial advice. But the point I'm trying to get to, I know, long walk, is that almost all of my colleagues that were millennials around my age had never even considered their retirement plan. They had never even looked into what this group retirement plan was. And, when I talked to them about it, some of them were just like, oh, I don't want them taking any more money off my paycheck. I need every dollar. And totally fair, because there are a lot of people that are in situations where they can't start saving because they're bare, we're barely covering our bills as it is. Saving really is a privilege and a luxury that not everyone has. And others were like, well, why didn't I know about this? I could have been saving for this amount of time already. And, it's a bit on the fault of the company. They were following good human resources practices by offering this non-income benefit. And we'll talk more about good HR practices and retaining employees later, but they weren't making it accessible and educating the staff on how it works and how they should get involved and what the benefit and costs are associated with the program. Instead, it was on the staff themselves to figure it out. And it can be figured out independently, but it doesn't have to be. Anyway, that's my little story about kind of the variety of financial literacy. And everyone has different levels of future financial planning too. Some people just are like, nah, I like to roll, seat in my pants, we'll figure it out on a month-to-month basis. Other people, plan out their budget to the penny. And it all depends on what sort of drivers you have, what future goals you have, and as well, I don't know how to describe it. I call it kind of mental space. There are some days where thinking about your financial planning or your bills or your budget, you just don't have the room for it that day, and you have to prioritize what you have, your mental capacity, and I guess you're even budgeting out what your mental capacity is at that point. And it's varied, and there's no shame. There shouldn't be any shame associated with it. Unfortunately, there kind of is, but it's figuring out what you need to know to be comfortable with what you know. If that isn't vague enough for you.